Now let's see what rules we have to follow when specifying a font on our website. First, note that we can specify different fonts for different elements without any problem. Besides, the rules of design dictate that we should not use too many different fonts on one website. This also applies to the use of too many colors. 2 or 3 different fonts are enough. The font for a certain element is defined by a property named font family. We place the name of the font as the value. We can enter it in uppercase or lowercase. It will work in both cases. If the font name consists of several words, as in the case of Times New Roman, it should be written in quotation marks. However, if we do not do it and write the name together, it should also work. But we shouldn't do this for the sake of clarity in the code. In the last example on this slide, you can see that we can specify several fonts for a certain element. Then we separate the font names with a comma. What are we doing this for? I'll tell you about it in a moment. If the browser finds a certain font on the user's system, it uses it. If not, it uses the next one and so on. If it doesn't find any from the list, it will use the default one, serif, which will be Times New Roman. So it's good to write sans serif, which will be Arial most often, at the end. We as the developers do not know if the user has a Roboto font on his system. If the browser finds it, it will use it. If not, it will look for another one, which is the Homa. If it does not find this font as well, it will use a default sans serif font, which will most likely be Arial. We should especially use such a notation when we use non-system fonts on the website, which we are not sure that will correctly download to the user's computer along with the website. But I will tell you about it in a moment. System fonts and imported fonts. Arial is in your system if you use Windows, Mac, or Linux, so it's a system font. But what about the Roboto font? It's a popular font designed by Google and used by default on the Android devices. The user, with high probability, does not have this font in the system. You must add it to the website for the user to display it correctly. That's why it's called an imported font. Of course, I will show you how to import fonts to the website. For the second example, it is a good idea to indicate some default sans serif system font after a comma if for some reason the Roboto font could not be imported to the user's system. We can use inheritance to determine the fonts on our website. This is the best way for me. We define the basic font for the HTML or body selector, and we assign additional fonts to appropriate elements, such as the headings. The sans serif notation after a comma in the font value should always be used just in case. Sometimes we just want to use whatever font as long as it is sans serif. Then we can come across such a notation. In this case, the default sans serif font will be Arial or Helvetica for the Mac users. On the example of the Times New Roman font, I wanted to show you what values for this font the browser will accept and interpret correctly. Each of these entries will be interpreted correctly by the modern browsers, but to be sure, since this name has more than one word, we should write it in quotation marks.